This video is part 2 of 2, and we'll be talking about pricing, comparisons, as well as taking this vehicle out for a drive. If you want to know about the inside of this vehicle, the outside of the vehicle, or what's going on under the hood, then go ahead and click that button right below me and you'll be taken on over to part 1. The first thing you need to know about the Santa Fe Sport out on the road is how much this vehicle weighs. It is one of the lightest entries in this segment, even though it is also one of the largest. At 3,459 pounds in this 2.4-liter front-wheel drive model, this is only 160 pounds heavier than the Mazda CX-5, which is considerably smaller than this. This is 200 pounds lighter than the lightest configuration of Jeep Cherokee. It's nearly 600 pounds lighter than a Ford Edge. Now keep in mind this vehicle is sized like a Ford Edge. It's not sized like a CR-V or RAV4. So the lightweight of this vehicle really is very impressive. If you're wondering how it compares to the GMC Terrain, it's about 400 pounds lighter than the 4-cylinder Terrain. Now the reason you should care about curb weight is because the lighter the curb weight, the better your braking, the better your acceleration, and the better your handling scores are going to be. And that's definitely true in this Santa Fe Sport. I ran from 0 to 60 in 8 seconds, which is definitely faster than the vast majority of 4-cylinder entries in this segment. If you get the 2-liter turbo engine in this vehicle, then the 0 to 60 time drops to 7 seconds flat, which is just about as fast as a V6 Ford Edge. That gives the Santa Fe overall 8 out of 10 points in terms of acceleration, 9 out of 10 points in the turbo. Now that score depends on what you're comparing the Santa Fe Sport to, because if you're comparing this to the likes of the compact entries like the Nissan Rogue, the Cherokee, the RAV4, the CR-V, etc., then this will do exceptionally well in that comparison. If, however, you're comparing this to something like a Ford Edge or a Lexus RX 350, then those are going to be faster in the acceleration test. The fact that the Santa Fe Sport really straddles the fence there between those two camps makes this a little bit difficult to compare out on the road. In terms of braking, the lightweight helps us score 9 out of 10 points when it comes to braking. The braking is very fade resistant in this vehicle, and stopping distances are fairly short. Now again, as with most vehicles, the wider the tires you get, the shorter your braking distance is going to be. When it comes to handling, I give this 9 out of 10 points. This isn't quite as good out on the road as the Mazda CX-5, but the fact that I can compare a vehicle that is substantially larger than that CX-5 to that Mazda is really telling you something about the handling in this vehicle. Of course, part of the reason the CX-5 handles so well is its light curb weight, and again, this is only 160 pounds heavier than that CX-5. The Santa Fe Sport feels a great deal more nimble out on the road than most configurations of the Ford Edge. The Ford Edge Sport does feel a little bit grippier out on the road, but it loses some of the feel. It definitely still feels heavy, although it does hold the road very well. When you compare this with the likes of the Lexus RX 350, which is what Hyundai would like you to compare certain versions of this to, then the RX definitely feels a little bit softer. This feels a little bit more connected, but I think in terms of overall grip, the Lexus RX 350 F Sport will still beat this. Now compared to something like the Cherokee, it's a little bit of a tricky comparison because this is solidly on-road focused and the Cherokee is solidly off-road focused. It's very obvious when you're out on these winding mountain roads. The Cherokee does tend to wallow a little bit more. You definitely have a softer suspension in that vehicle. You get more tip and dive, more body roll overall. Compared to entries like the RAV4 and the Kia Sportage, this vehicle feels much more settled out on the road. The suspension never really got upset over broken pavement, especially in corners on broken pavement, and that sort of situation can upset the RAV4 and the Sportage just a little bit. Over 680 miles in this vehicle, I have been averaging 24.1 miles per gallon, and that is on my daily commute in which I go up and over a 2,200-foot mountain pass, do a little bit of highway driving. That also includes idling during photo shoots, etc. That gets us an 8 out of 10 score. The Mazda CX-5 does do a decent amount better than this, especially if you get the manual transmission. It is easily one of the most fuel-efficient crossovers available in America, but this does incredibly well for itself. Now all of this gets 8 out of 10 points when you compare this with the likes of the RAV4, the CR-V, etc. When you compare this with the likes of the Toyota Venza and the Ford Edge, I actually give it 9 to 10 out of 10 points. That's because we get much better fuel economy in this than in the V6 version of the Edge. Keep in mind that the base version in the Edge is the V6 engine, and it is going to be faster off the line than this vehicle, but you are going to get better fuel economy in the Santa Fe Sport. Now performance is going to end up relatively close if you get the 2.0-liter turbo in the Santa Fe Sport. It's only about 0.2 of a second slower than that Edge. Although fuel economy does drop in the Santa Fe Sport with the 2-liter turbo engine, it is still going to be significantly better than in the Edge, even with the Edge having a 2.0-liter turbo engine in it as well, and that's all down to the weight. This is again 600 pounds lighter than the Edge, and therefore you're going to get better fuel economy. The fuel economy is also excellent when you compare this to the Toyota Venza or the Lexus RX 350, but again, this is going to be slower than those two options if you get the V6 engines. When it comes to cabin noise, this vehicle came in at 69.5 decibels at 50 miles an hour, which is very similar to the Lexus RX 350 in terms of cabin noise. It's definitely one of the quietest entries in this mass market segment, definitely quieter than the RAV4, the CR-V, the Escape, as well as the Cherokee. In general, the Santa Fe Sport performs very well out on the road, but it is important to not confuse this with the regular Santa Fe, and that's the Santa Fe without the Sport, because that model is nearly 4,000 pounds, so it is a decent amount heavier than this. You also have a V6 engine up front, so the front end is a little bit heavier than the Santa Fe Sport, and therefore it's not going to feel quite as balanced out on the road. Now that being said, the Santa Fe without the Sport is probably one of the better handling entries in its segment as well, because it's competing with the likes of the nearly 5,000 pound GM Lambda triplets. Now you can always find out which car I'm test driving this week over at facebook.com/AlexandAutos, and my Facebook fans over there asked me to comment on this 6-speed automatic transmission. Now I have heard some complaints about Hyundai's automatic transmission. This is an in-house designed automatic. It is shared with Kia and Hyundai models, as is the engine under the hood. So you'll find the same basic engines in this vehicle in the Optima as well as the Sonata, along with the transmission. Now Hyundai's 6-speed automatic transmission does have a relatively distinctive feel to it. Most automatic transmissions have to reduce engine power just a little bit when they're shifting gears, so that way you can make your clutch packs inside the transmission last a little bit longer. Hyundai chooses to retard engine power just a little bit more than everyone else, so that makes the shifts feel a little bit more definite. You're in one gear, you're in sort of a neutral feel with a little bit less power, and then you're in the next gear. It's a very definite, different feel in this transmission than some of the others out there. However, it will more likely than not result in a longer transmission lifetime in the Hyundai transmission versus some of those others out there, because the more you retard engine torque during shifts, the less wear you're going to get on the clutch, the less wear you're going to get inside the transmission, the longer it may last. Now some of that may have to do with the fact that Hyundai does give you an incredibly long powertrain warranty, and perhaps they're just being ultra cautious about the lifetime of the transmission. It doesn't really bother me actually out on the road. Instead, it just makes this transmission feel a little bit more like your average dual clutch transmission. The feeling is very similar. My Facebook followers also wanted me to comment on this variable power steering system in this vehicle. Like many of the other Hyundai models out there, we have 3 different drive modes. We have Comfort, Normal, and Sport, and all it really does is change the assist in the electronic power steering system. So this doesn't change the ratio, so it won't do anything to change the relationship between the steering wheel and the wheels except for the level of assist the system is giving you. If you put it in Comfort, however, it really makes the Santa Fe Sport feel ponderous and just not very connected to the road. Now don't worry, Sport mode doesn't make this crossover feel like it is lacking power steering or anything like that. You're not going to get an upper body workout by steering this vehicle on your favorite mountain road. It just makes it feel a little bit more connected and a little bit more communicative. Now I do have to insert the caveat there that this does use electric power steering, and that electric power steering is very numb, just like all the other entries in this segment. We're all talking about shades of gray here because every vehicle with electric power steering is fairly numb out on the road, but some are more numb than others. For 2014, the Santa Fe starts at $24,950. It is important to keep in mind, as I said earlier, that the Santa Fe Sport is kind of a tweener vehicle. This slots size-wise in between the Ford Edge and the Ford Escape, and that is very important to keep in mind when it comes to pricing and comparisons. If you want the 2-liter turbocharged engine, that starts at $30,650, and you can add all-wheel drive to either the 2.4 or the 2.0T for $1,750. Now, as we've come to expect from Hyundai, once you select the drivetrain, you just choose from a few select packages. There really are very few standalone options on this vehicle. On the 2.4-liter model, we have the popular equipment package that is $1,150. It gives you roof rails, fog lights, auto headlamps, heated mirrors, power driver's seat, heated front seats, leather steering wheel, and a 4.3-inch touchscreen audio system. We then have the premium package for $3,200 that gives you blind spot monitoring, leather seats, power passenger seat, sliding second row, 2-zone climate control, keyless go, dimming rearview mirror, and the integrated rear window shades. We then have the tech package, which is $3,200, and our vehicle also has that option right here. That gives you the panoramic roof, rear parking sensors, 8-inch nav system, premium audio, heated steering wheel, ventilated seats, heated second row, and the memory system for the driver's seat. Now the options on the 2.0T aren't the same because the 2.0T comes with extra standard equipment in that base model versus the base 2.4-liter engine. The first option package on the 2.0T is the navigation option for $1,750. In addition to the 8-inch navigation system, you also get 19-inch wheels and the Infinity 12-speaker surround audio system. The 2.0T model can also be had with a $4,350 technology package that gives you 19-inch wheels yet again. We also get xenon headlamps that I mentioned earlier, the panoramic roof, rear parking assist, heated steering wheel, the memory system for the driver's seat, ventilated seats, and the heated rear seats. Now let's talk about pricing on the competition. The Ford Edge starts at $28,100 and that V6 is standard. If you opt for the Chevy Equinox, it starts at $24,440, V6 is $28,940. When you compare the V6 engines in the competition, keep in mind that this is significantly lighter than the competition, even though this doesn't have as much power as GM's 300 horsepower V6 in that Equinox or the Terrain. The Jeep Cherokee starts at $22,995, $24,495 if you get the V6. It's probably the least expensive V6 in this segment. The RAV4, $23,550, there's no V6. The Rogue, $22,790, again no V6. And the Honda CR-V, $23,120, yet again no V6. The RAV4 is $1,500 less than a base model Santa Fe. You get a little bit less than that RAV4 than you get in the Santa Fe, and the interior isn't quite as nice as the Hyundai either. You also get a vehicle that is significantly smaller than this, and that is important to keep in mind. Same thing goes for the CR-V. It's $1,875 less, it's a decent amount smaller, and it is also a little bit less nice on the inside. Now that said, the CR-V is still one of my favorite entries in this segment, and it is also an excellent value, especially at the lower end trims. Hopefully I'll have my hands on the 2015 model very shortly. Fuel economy went up in that thanks to the new engine and transmission under the hood. One important thing to keep in mind with the CR-V is that the way Honda packages options, you do have to climb significantly up the ladder to get things like navigation on the inside. Jeep's Cherokee is $1,835 less than this, however it is smaller, it's also significantly heavier. One important thing to keep in mind with the Cherokee is that it is also after a different mission. The Cherokee is more of an off-road focused vehicle, this is a very on-road focused vehicle, so the two are a little bit harder to compare in that manner. The Cherokee is also an excellent value. It's very comfortable on the inside and has some very nice interior fittings. You will pay a decent amount for those off-road capable versions of the Cherokee, however, there is no truly off-road version of the Santa Fe Sport. You should also know that the Cherokee comes standard with a 9-speed automatic transmission under the hood, and that does seriously improve highway fuel economy, especially in the V6 model. Compared to the Ford Edge, the Santa Fe is approximately $4,100 less expensive. Keep in mind, however, that the Edge gets a standard V6 engine, this gets a standard 4-cylinder engine. Now you can get a 2-liter turbocharged engine in that Edge just like you can in the Santa Fe, but it's not going to get you the same kind of fuel economy as this vehicle because the Edge is significantly heavier. It's nearly 4,000 pounds, this is significantly lighter. Overall, the comparison with the Edge is incredibly apt. They remind me a great deal of one another. I think that overall parts quality on the Edge on the inside is slightly higher, but I think the design of those parts in the Santa Fe is far more attractive. And therefore, it kind of compensates and also helps hide the fact that we have more hard touch plastics on this interior than you do in the Ford Edge. That's what I talked about earlier about cutting the right corners on the inside of a vehicle. Hyundai managed to cut all the right corners, helping reduce the price, but still making it more attractive than the Edge. And they cut corners in an area that just doesn't really matter. So you have hard plastics higher up on the dashboard, but soft touch plastics where the driver and the passenger will interact with them. Now right behind here we also have slightly more storage room than the Edge. We have about the same kind of creature comforts and same kind of overall seat comfort scores that we also get in the Edge. Now the Santa Fe Sport won't just cost you less than the Ford, it'll also cost you less to operate because we do get better fuel economy in this model. We also get slightly better handling than most versions of the Edge due to the lower curb weight. Toyota's Venza has always been a little bit of an odd duck in their lineup, slotting between the RAV4 and the more expensive Highlander. It doesn't sell quite as well as either of those two models either. It starts out with a 4-cylinder engine very much like the Santa Fe Sport, however it will cost you approximately $3,000 more. Overall, I didn't find the Venza nearly as nice or as comfortable on the inside as the Hyundai, and reliability-wise, they're approximately equal, so I would call that a definite value score on Hyundai's side with this model. Hyundai has made a point of comparing this vehicle to the Lexus RX 350, and that comparison doesn't quite make sense in my head, I have to say. The RX 350 may be $9,000 to $14,000 more expensive, but it does have a luxury car brand and a much nicer interior. In addition to things like better leather and real wood trim on the inside, the RX 350 is also quieter, the seats are a little bit more comfortable, the drivetrain is a little bit smoother, and if you get the RX 350 F Sport, it handles a little bit better and has an 8-speed automatic. Jeep's Grand Cherokee also comes to mind, but it's about $4,000 more expensive than this. It also has a standard V6 engine and it's rear-wheel drive. It's quite a different vehicle than this. Very much like Jeep's Cherokee, the Grand Cherokee is more of an off-road focused vehicle. The very closely related Kia Sorento is an obvious choice for comparisons to the Santa Fe Sport. Now, in that comparison, I actually like the Sorento because you can get the optional 7-passenger seating in the Sorento. You can get that optional 3rd row right back there. It's an awful lot more cramped than if you get the Santa Fe without the Sport. That would be the slightly longer version. And that's because that Sorento is sized somewhat in between the Santa Fe and the Santa Fe Sport. Now the Sorento also has a 4-cylinder engine under the hood in the base model, but most models of the Sorento on dealer lots will have the same V6 engine as the Hyundai Santa Fe. When it comes to value, I give this 9.5 points out of 10. This is easily one of the best values in all the segments in which it competes. While I think the interior in the Grand Cherokee is slightly better in various trims, in that base trim of the Grand Cherokee, it's very equal to this. The interior is definitely nicer, in my opinion, in this vehicle than any of the other competition that we've taken a look at, and the pricing is also very good. The overall size, price, and feature content in the Santa Fe Sport leave this in kind of an interesting position in this segment. We have the smaller entries down there by the Ford Escape, the Honda CR-V, the RAV4, etc., and then we have the larger vehicles like the Venza and the Edge. While the Santa Fe Sport is sized more like the Edge or the Venza, it's priced somewhere in between that group and the smaller group. It's also feature contented a little bit in between as well. We have the 4-cylinder engines under the hood instead of the V6 options that we get in those larger SUVs, but we do have all the room that you get in the larger SUVs, as well as most of the feature content on the inside. Overall, this is definitely a vehicle that I would recommend. If you're looking for one of the smaller entries in the segment, this is definitely not it. It's true that it is a little bit more nimble out on the road than some of those compact crossover vehicles, but it definitely is not a compact crossover vehicle in the traditional sense. It's a decent amount larger, so it's going to take more room in your garage or more room in a parking spot. If you're looking for a more cost-effective, more economical, and more luxurious entry than the Ford Edge or the Toyota Venza, then the Santa Fe Sport is definitely something that you should put at the top of your list. If you really like the Lexus RX 350 but you can't quite afford one, then I could see shopping this, but I wouldn't normally put the two on the same cross-shopping list. Because rear seat accommodations and additional cargo room are the prime reasons that people tend to buy crossovers over sedans, this is part of why the Santa Fe is one of my favorite entries in this segment. It's also why I would highly recommend the Santa Fe if you're looking at a compact or a mid-sized crossover vehicle. We have very comfortable back seats, and we also have an incredible amount of storage space right back there behind this second row. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2014 Hyundai Santa Fe Sport. Go ahead and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of my latest videos. If you're just watching part 2 of this video, then you'll also find part 1 of the Santa Fe on my channel as well. That's where I cover the exterior, the interior, take a complete walk around, and dive under the hood as well. You can find me over at facebook.com/AlexandAutos, over at Twitter as AlexandAutos, and you can always email your questions to alex@alexandautos.com. I'll see you next week.